Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Meghan Donohoe. How are you doing, Meghan?
So good. Thank you, Tyler. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, so good to have you on. And it's Calgary. We've run into each other so many times and had so many great conversations. We're like, hell, we need to record these. The world needs to hear.
Yes,
and
I agree.
I'm also very excited about what you're doing. Leadership. What a broad topic. It's like saying, I'm in marketing. I work in leadership. Okay, where do we go from here? So I'm excited to dig into this conversation with you. And you've taken this seriously your whole career, but lately you've gone a little bit extra and founded your own company solely based on it called Pebble. And you are the co-founder. So I don't know who your co-founder is. So we'll talk about that in a second. But what's a Pebble? What is it all about? And talk to me about the culmination of all your years of being involved in this topic, but deciding, okay, now's time. Now's time to make a thing.
Yeah. And Tyler too, I have been following your podcast and your leadership journey, and I love the things you say about leadership. And so I feel some kinship here. I think there's going to be so much that we could talk about and jam on about what we believe leadership is and should be. So I'm so excited to be here. Yeah. Well, so Pebble was a very intentional choice of words because we believe that leaders need to be more like pebbles. And I know you can't see me, but I'm holding. Well, Tyler can see me, but the audience can't. But I'm holding a pebble, and I find
there's a visual aid. There's a visual aid here, folks.
But I'm always holding them, and it's always a good reminder. And that this idea.
I have one on my desk as well.
Look, see, there you go.
Very similar. I have one right here. Absolutely.
They are great fidget toys, but
that was not intentional, by the way, folks. That was completely coincidental. Yeah, back to good alignment, right?
I mean, there you go. See, I just knew it. I knew there was a connection here. So Pebbles really was this idea of how we, my co-founders, who's Alicia White and Bridget Legault, that there's three of us together with Pebble, nice. How we believe leadership can be, is, and should be into the future as we face a very complex and uncertain world. And so, Pebbles are shaped by their environment. They're agile, right? And so each one of them has gone through a very long period of, being firm, right? So you can hold your beliefs and you can hold your values, but you can also be malleable to what's around you, and you can change, you can shift, and it's okay. It's not going to change who you are necessarily, but it might change your shape a little bit. And then I also love how, with leaders, oftentimes we start movements, and that's what pebbles do, right? You throw a pebble into the water, it creates a ripple effect. And I think that's where, in many cases as a leader, like everything we say as a leader is leading. Like anytime you speak, you have an opportunity to lead as a leader. And I think that's those ripples that we can create, and we can create for good. We can also create for not so good.
We can cause an avalanche to wipe out the village.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the tsunami.
Just to take that to its full dramatic conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the avalanche; it's the tsunami from the water perspective,
yes.
too, right? And then pebbles are never alone, and I think that's the other piece, is that leadership can feel very lonely. And we believe that the future of more sustainable leadership is leaders leaning into the collective power of each other and supporting each other collectively. And so, rarely do you find a pebble alone unless it's in your shoe, which is annoying, and or on your desk because we've picked it up from a pile. So leaders, they're never alone. And I think the other piece is that pebbles are very dynamic. They can skip across a water, right? We can skip the pebble across the water. Or they can sink to the bottom, or they can be moved by a river. And so leaders truly today need to be so dynamic in how they approach anything in their organizations, in the way they lead their teams, in their lives. And there really isn't a playbook anymore. So that's why it's Pebble.
When you look at leadership from an organizational perspective, I'm gonna keep playing like. There's the pebble and how it interacts with the world around its environment. Never alone can cause this because an influence of that is an outcome of this. My perspective on leadership often, though, is the pebble needs to look inside itself to see what it's made of. Is it a granite pebble? Is it a shale pebble? Is it so I'm going to do my best to kind of stick with this thread here you got going on. I love a good story. So when you engage with the leaders or an organization that's like, we need to work on leadership, like a great, just big buzzword. It's like, we need to be better at stuff and things. It's it can be that messy. Yeah. What's the balance between looking at or helping that pebble to look inside itself, to know what its origins are, to know what its beliefs are? One of my leaders always says, firm beliefs loosely held, because I could learn something today that's going to change but I have opinions. but they're open. How the balance of, okay, we're going to work on this as an organization versus, okay, to do that, we still have to work on ourselves as individual pebbles. How do you balance even the two? And it's a big just way to open this up between the pebble as a soul, the pebble that has the ability to change and move itself versus when you throw all the pebbles together into the ripple of the water or whatever the case may be. I'll stop with the metaphor.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think, I mean, the beautiful thing about a metaphor is that people apply their own perspectives to it, and it can kind of extend the conversation. And I don't ever want to pretend I have all the answers, because this is what I love about the idea of collective in our approach to leadership, is that we all are going to bring different perspectives. So a couple of things that your thoughts and questions brought up. One is that, yes, we're in a system within an organization, and sometimes within a system there's tension, right? There's always this tension between the organization and the larger system, and then the individual and everything they bring to that context. And I think sometimes, or maybe to this point, we spent a lot of time trying to solve for tension, right? We don't want to feel discomfort or tension, when I think actually we're going to just continue to experience more tension, more change, more uncertainty. And so what would it look like to lean into tension and lean into polarity and lean into paradox? And so, I mean, I know, like, I hear it all the time. People are going, it's both and, or it's, I'm trying to balance this and this. I'm trying to balance accountability to my organization's goals while, trying to be caring to the individual because I know what's happening for them. I'm trying to balance my own well-being in life while also, the passion and support I want to give to my organization. It's this constant tension and paradox. And so what we often talk to leaders about and teach leaders is, well, how do you, it's not about solving for it. Like you're not supposed to stop the tension. You lean into the flow of that energy. And so you lean into the tension, you recognize that there are benefits to both poles, right? There are benefits to the organizational system in context and the things that it's going to provide to you, the ways in which it's going to shift you as a leader. And then there are benefits in self-discovery and understanding who you are and bringing everything that you can to the table into your organization. So some of that self-awareness. And then there's also drawbacks as well to both sides. And so it's about being clear about what the benefits and the drawbacks are, and then leaning into that energy and then shifting, right? So the more you experience the benefits, that's, you're kind of doing good, right? So you might be that your self-awareness, you're finding a lot of benefit. It's giving you a lot of clarity as you navigate, all of your duties in an organization and supporting your team and leading your projects, leading your people. And then suddenly, maybe you've become too self-absorbed, or you become too self-aware that it's actually causing you anxiety and frustration and depression.
Paralysis, yeah.
Right, some paralysis, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And so maybe you need to move your energy into this more organizational focus and going, okay, well, there's certain things about the organizational context that I can't control. And so what does it look like to navigate those things and not take it so personally? And so this is
just the awareness to do that is a milestone for so many of us.
Yes.
Because it's always easy to say how someone else should do that, except when you're in it, because then your emotions get cranked up, right? And you respond.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think the thing I love about, so self-awareness is so important for leaders and really understanding who you are, what you believe. I also think, and you and I've talked about this before, so I think we'll have an interesting thought, but I want to push it to the next level, which is self-connection. I think that beyond self-awareness, which is really like, you understand, those parts of yourself, it's actually then connecting to those parts of yourself, and not just being aware, but actually being connected. Because I think that is what opens up more dynamic fluidity between any polarity that you encounter.
Well, it kind of layers into the awareness of, like, being aware of the thing doesn't necessarily improve it, change it. It's a start. I've recognized it. I see it. I see you, like literally to myself in the mirror. But the ability to connect to it and then go deeper to then be able to shift it or use it or have maybe more behavioral flexibility. That's an interesting next, because awareness alone does that. If you look at it, we were joking about sales funnel. Awareness is the top of the funnel. I became aware of you. That's it. And I didn't buy from you. I didn't want to learn more about you. I didn't inquire, I didn't read any of your content. But if I want to become connected to a brand or a product or a purchase, I go beyond awareness. I have to. If not awareness, that's just impressions, clicks, top of the funnel, just to oversimplify.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can we be leaders if
How do
we're
we go
not
deeper?
connected to ourselves, right? And we often tell leaders, go, you have to connect with your team, you have to get to know them. I don't necessarily think we do the same for ourselves. I think, and I really do think it's
That's
beyond
scary. That's scary for a
knowing
lot of
values.
people. It's scary.
Oh, it's so scary. Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've been on my own connection journey on that piece. And I think we had talked about this previously. And I've heard you talk a little bit in previous podcasts about some philosophers and teachings that you refer to. But I'm really getting into this internal family systems journey for myself.
We did talk about that. Yeah.
And so for any listeners who don't know what internal family systems is, it's Richard Schwartz. He wrote a book called No Bad Parts. And it kind of takes, and this is my I am not the counselor in this. I am the patient in this scenario, having an opportunity to learn about myself. But it's basically internal family systems is this movement away from we have a unitary mind, and instead is this idea that we are made up of parts. And you also have a self, and it's the Inside Out movie is essentially a simplified version of what that feels like. But in that movie, you have Joy, who is an emotion, but she has a role that she plays in the head of the girl in the movie, and she also experiences frustration and sadness and all these other things. And what's really cool is that you get to know all your different parts and what they bring to you. And then there's this self energy, which shows up in Inside Out too. I don't know, maybe people haven't seen it.
I have seen it. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
And every time you watch a movie like that with a different set of filters, you probably will be a different movie.
Like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But yourself is those moments in time when you feel clear and compassionate and connected. And I think the best way I've heard it described is that yourself just is. You're not trying to solve anything. You're not trying to logic anything. You're not trying to you're not feeling sad. It just is. It feels light and connected. And all those other feelings that come into play, those are your parts. And back to that title that Richard Schwartz talks about there is no bad parts. They serve you in different parts of your life, but being connected to yourself and knowing your parts is being in relationship with those different parts of your family system. And I think, I really am, I'm only just uncovering this theory and approach, but it has been quite remarkably life-changing for me. I've really enjoyed
I really appreciate
connecting with myself.
We have chatted about it before, and I'm laughing, I'm looking at my inbox. Yesterday, my business partner's wife, who's a psychologist, I highly recommend reading No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz if you haven't already. I use IFS in my practice constantly. I was like, wait a second.
Amazing.
Boom, the world just triangulated me, bang, and hit me. She sent that to me yesterday afternoon. I'm just laughing. I love when the world does that. That's why I find it amusing. I think one of my favorites around that was Symphony of Selves by James Fadiman. Where he goes into that in detail.
Yes.
We are a culmination of selves, and and he goes into a little bit now. Our audience is now getting to eavesdrop on Meghan and Tyler talking, and this is how it goes. As we went to a single deity society versus a multi-deity society, the multiple self got pushed away with you have to be one, and you have to be one version of yourself all the time that's consistent, because that's how we look at the world, and that's how that was orchestrated. And then he claims, what caused a lot of strife and a lot of psychological challenges, we might say, as humans, as we tried to force ourselves to be this imaginary one version, which is just not how it is, and he took a whole book to summarize what I just butchered in 30 seconds.
I know, yeah.
To be clear, I want to be respectful of his work versus my definition.
Yes, go to the people who really clarified or just have done some deep study.
Okay, let's pull back up. You said something I love so much about solve for tension versus lean into tension. When you're working with organizations, it feels like such a human thing to try to make it easy. Oh, we have to remove all the friction. We have to make it so smooth. But yet that's when we learn the negative emotions are what drive response. They're what drive us to change. I love lean into tension. Are organizations getting there, or is that the first thing that you find yourself teaching, for lack of a better word, when you go, we need to solve? You're like, well, actually, no, this is great. It's how we deal with it, how we interpret it, how we process it, how we roll down the hill together as pebbles.
Yeah.
Or is it, no, we need to solve for all the tension. We need to make sure everybody gets along, which just it's not realistic.
100%. That is the default. And solving for tension and leaning into tension It requires some trust and relationship and connection, right? Because it's uncomfortable. And so, I mean, like a big thing that we always say at Pebble is that the future of leadership development is not content, it's connection. It's not content, it's connection. But everybody wants content, right? Like, so give me time management. I really need tools to help with difficult conversations. And those things, yes, are very important. But content is everywhere. You can find, I mean, ChatGPT and, the future little babies that it has that become our little individual, coaches and,
yes, the agent evolution that's coming.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Our little, I like calling them babies, but it's they're going to give us all the content we need. But there's no playbook for complexity. Complexity requires space, which is a quote from someone, a thinker called Jennifer Garvey Berger, who I love to follow. That complexity requires space, and so we need the space, and we need to build connection with the people around us in order to be comfortable with leaning into the discomfort and the tension. It's interesting because I actually have a perfect example for this where last week, Alicia and I were facilitating a team offsite for a small group, a small nonprofit group, and a wonderful team, very purpose-driven, they're trying to very intentionally focus on their culture. And they have two senior leaders. And we had gathered some data beforehand for the team, but prior to this offsite, to just inform what we needed to talk about as a team. And we had a list of questions of the things that the team needed answered. And a lot of it was operational, just, typical communication stuff. And some of it was bigger and more uncomfortable. And so we were planning the agenda, and we sat down with the leaders and we said, listen, we need you to answer these questions for the team, and we've committed to answering them. And so they said, okay. And so we said, but what if instead of a presentation, what if we made it a moderated Q&A? What if you just sat in the chairs in front of your team, and my co-founder Alicia moderated the conversation? And so I can tell you right now that I have suggested this to countless leaders in organizations that I've consulted for, but also in organizations that I've worked within. And I can only think of one other example where leaders have said yes to that request, because it is very vulnerable. It means you don't have a script. It means you don't know what questions are going to be asked. And it means it could get very uncomfortable. And they both said yes. And it was amazing.
I love that so much.
Yes, I know. And
it's a little window into my personality. I'm like, yes, let's do it. I love it. Let's go.
I love it.
Let's get into the real shit. Let's get into it.
Right. And then of course, like, the behavioral scientist in me is like, well, we need to measure this. Like, we need to see what happens when we do this. And so we did. And we always ask teams at the beginning, and I love that. Like, Mentimeter is a great tool for anybody if you want to know what people are thinking at any moment in time. And so at the beginning of the session, which we always do this, we invite people to help us complete a word cloud by asking them, like, how you're walking into this session thinking and feeling, and then you get 3 words.
What?
And then we usually do it at the end to see how people's energy levels have evolved and shifted, and what's sort of the sentiment in the room. And it's not, there's no intention to fix, right? It's leaning into the tension and going, this is just how it is. This is just who we are. And it's a process, and it's not a one-time thing, which is why offsite should never be a one-time thing. And so, but what we did this time,
it's not a box checking exercise.
No, it's not a box. No, it has to be part of a broader strategy, which we try to help people do. So, but what we did is that this time we put in that same word cloud sentiment conversation or question after the Q&A. And here's how it went. It was a bit terrifying for us as facilitators. So at the beginning of the day, people walking in, typical, like, I'm tired and I'm hopeful, I'm curious, excited, like, annoyed that I have to be here, stressed, busy, right? All those things that we hear. Then we did the Q&A, it got a little awkward. There were times where people asked some questions that were hard, like really hard. And people asked questions where they received answers they weren't happy about, right? They wanted different answers, and they didn't get the answers they wanted. And so we did the word cloud at the end of that Q&A, which went for almost an hour, and we barely got through all the things we wanted to get through. We had to commit to follow up. And the word cloud was frustrated, annoyed, angry, unheard, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it was very negative, very negative. And it was super uncomfortable. And you could feel the energy in the room was uncomfortable and there was some tension, and we went and had lunch. And then we very thoughtfully in the afternoon built the agenda so where it was like, okay, like this is we feel uncomfortable. There's some stuff going on that is hard. We're going to follow up and we're going to continue to have these conversations so that they become easier. And there's things that we can all do that is all within our power to help progress our culture. And so we spent the afternoon solutioning, which we all love to do, right? Solutioning is like that, like, you know, it's like the decadent treat at the end of a meal. Like people love solutioning. And by the end, and we had so much energy in the room, people were excited, people were, you know, laughing, and we were moving around a lot. And the word cloud at the very end was highly positive. So it was, I'm hopeful, I'm curious, I'm excited, I'm, you know, motivated to go back to work and do some other things. And so it was such a great reminder, even for us as facilitators, to go, it is okay to sit in the tension and the discomfort. And like, I gotta say, like these leaders have now taken the team in a whole other direction with how they're going to communicate with them. They've signed up to do these Q&As once a month now with their team. We're going to be supporting them with moderating so we can help, you know, like sometimes there are things that come up in those kind of conversations and you need the moderator to say, oh, that's a great question.
The power of a third party involved in that is huge.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah. There's some safety for everybody.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
100%. Just as safe to babysit the process in a supportive, like I'm outside. You can't see the label when you're inside the bottle. So to have people that are outside that bottle when you're in the room like that, my thought, like, if they hadn't got into that we call it wet concrete when you're trying to do a campaign or an idea and you're like, we're in the wet concrete. Like, we got to get there. We don't have the idea. We don't have enough information. We don't know enough about the customer, all those things. But the fact that they went through that and they were in a guided process, the landmines that were lying around that organization, if that process, but clearly the leaders knew something was up or they felt the need to do this, like that intuition or that gut that's like, we need to do something. As a leader, you also need to lean into that and listen to it. Listen to it.
Yes. Yeah.
There's grenades in the bottom of the boat and the pins are about to fall out at all times when you're dealing with a group of human beings. And that's okay. You know,
yes.
I don't want to lose a leg. I just want to feel uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I think sometimes.
So I took it in a whole nother direction on metaphors. No. I need to dial that back. The grenade is a bad metaphor.
Yeah. I try to steer clear.
We all know what it means though, but I know it's like, I read recently, like, stop using war analogies in the boardroom, use dancing metaphors. Like, no, like we're going to battle it out. No, we're going to get in lockstep. Like, like watch how your meeting changes. I was like, that's very, thank you for that. Good advice. And then I use a grenade metaphor. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Sports and war metaphors are usually the most commonly used in organizations.
I'm such a male. That's like too much watching male masculine toxic masculinity movies when I was a kid.
It does get very fun though. If you get as a team, you start to go like, okay, anytime someone uses a metaphor, someone else has to counter with like the completely like strangest, most
I like that
awkward metaphor just to play with that. It's so good.
What a powerful day. What a powerful room. And I love even the risk you took as facilitators. Like, this must be perfect. We have to make sure everyone's having a positive time. Like, you can tell a story about what facilitating that could be like as well, versus understanding where you were to go. Keep holding trust in the room or holding space for people to feel really uncomfortable. Having lunch, so you had a physical break. You ate food, so your physiology, actually, your chemicals in your body changed.
Yes.
Like there were some things in there that actually allowed the afternoon to happen, right? In my mind. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that to me is really this embodied leadership. Like I love, oh goodness, Murphy Paul. Her last name is Murphy Paul. I'm just losing her first name for a moment, but she talks about this idea of like embodied leadership and how it's all connected, right? Like your body, your gut are all connected to how your mind is too. And so this idea of movement, there's even the senses, like smells help you remember things. And so using all of those things is really important.
Should always bring an apple pie into like halfway through a rough meeting, because everyone be like, I don't know what to feel now. Like, I got the smell. You play some song from their childhood and then they just fall apart.
I. You too, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great icebreaker, right? Or a warm up is getting people to share a song that reminds them of a time when, and then you can prime the day. This is my psychology coming
back many years ago. I've done my are you familiar with? I'm sure you've come across NLP, neuro linguistic practitioner. I've done that twice as a journey 20 years ago, and then again another about 10 years ago. One of the things they often teach in a coaching environment is the pattern interrupter, the break state, and how important that is. Like, hey, Megan, just play with me for a second. Like, what's your favorite song, and what would your house look like if it was purple? And you're like, what? But the just breaking the thought pattern and then going, okay, let's get back to what we're, because it's kind of the mind that it took to get there is maybe not the same mind that it takes to get out of there or to move forward with it. That little break state and that pattern interrupt that you can create with your team, you can create in a one-on-one session, you can create just in your own thought process. I've seen it work so many times when you're like, no, I'm just kind of stuck. And like, I'm going to look over here. Then I look back and it just never looks the same again. And that's such a powerful tactic as a leader for self. And when you get into those sessions where you all get in the groove gets too deep it feels too deep to get out of, but it's just one step, half a step away is a new groove.
Yes, that's so great. Yeah, even like getting outside and even doing activities that you might normally do sitting down around a table, but doing it outside.
Oh, I love a good walk and talk. Love me a good walk and talk.
So good. Yeah. It's so different. I mean, we had people go out and take pictures of something that would represent what they wanted the team to be in the future.
That's super fun.
Right.
That's so playful and so intentional at the same time. I love that.
Yeah. Use the metaphors of the environment to describe what you're doing. And it is that a little bit of that, shifting gears and helping people like open up a different way of
instead of sending me an emoji, go and take a picture of nature that represents how you feel. That's so good.
Yeah, that's another way or how you want the team to look. Like, I mean, there's so many analogies or like metaphors in nature that represent teams and working together and collective and supporting each other.
With the companies you're talking to, are we seeing more of an appetite for the fluffy stuff? And it's not fluffy at all. I say that very intentionally and very facetiously. I'm walking into, hey, I'm a marketer. I've sat with many, engineer-based CEOs or accounting-based CEOs, and they're like, what you do is bullshit, right? So I'm familiar with getting lumped into some of that kind of category.
Yeah.
But yet you're a consumer, you buy, you have feelings, you love brands, but yet your customers don't have that.
Yeah.
When it comes to leadership, so much of this has been pushed aside over the years. But also, if the quote unquote old way was working, we wouldn't be questing for these new ways. And are you seeing more of an appetite? Or also, is it just the right customer for you, your ICP, is the companies that do get it? Like, is it just as simple as that? Like, some get it and some don't, and we're all on the journey?
Good question. I think human skills have become more accepted as something that we all need in order to have thriving workplaces. And I think it's just the level of comfort with how deep they want to go into these human skills. That's really where we see some variability. So, I mean, to your point, so some people just want some self-awareness, right? It's like, how do I lead self? We're going to just do some values inventory, maybe some energy management stuff, and then we're going to move on. And maybe like your personal leadership philosophy, but they may not be willing to go deeper and do more self-connection and connect in opportunities for therapy with some of that work. And so I think it's the level of depth people are willing to go. It's very safe. I think the safest organizations are playing in the space of content. They're saying, okay, I just, tell me how to have crucial conversations or candid conversations. Tell me how to have time management. Oh, I really need something on difficult conversations. I need some performance management stuff. Right? And so they're picking and choosing the content they think will help give leaders a toolkit to address challenges. Yeah. And the problem with that mindset or the problem with that approach is that I've said this a couple times, but like the world is more complex. Like the needs that people have in the workplaces are so much different than they were previously. And like I don't even know if we even talk as much about this bringing, you have your work self and your home self. Like people just know it's not a thing anymore. Like you're showing up as yourself.
I wish I only had two selves to bring to places, Megan.
Yeah, it would be so nice.
And sometimes when I respond in a way that is not favorable, I'm like, whoa, which version of self showed up and what trigger pushed that button? Because I don't see that that was not helpful, that reaction.
No, it's true. So I think
let's pick on I really want to pick on give me the formula for having a difficult conversation. Give me the steps. Because two leaders do that. And they both follow the same, but one shows up with empathy, one shows up with awareness, one shows up with caring, whatever. One shows up with, I'm just going to follow the list because I'm an engineer, I'm an accountant. I'm going to super pick on engineers. Uncle George at Easter dinner always likes to get a couple glasses of wines and take me on about something. So I have trauma around that. And they follow the list and like, that didn't work. That person, like, that didn't work
Right.
at all. They went to HR after. The danger of the content journey of that being a
Oh,
solution.
it's not a
Oh my,
solution. And I mean,
it's
because
not,
that's
yeah,
the
it's
thing,
just
right?
not a solution.
It's
Actually,
no,
it's just
because
not.
you can't find, there is no silver bullet to leadership. Leadership is a practice, right? Which means you have to
Great
practice
word. Great word.
every single day. And so, and because of, and also, I mean, leadership is a relationship with somebody else. And it's with many others. And so if you're in relationship with somebody, you don't apply the same toolkit, of how you behave with your best friend as you do with your spouse, as you do with your kids,
Oh,
right?
that's
Like,
such a
of
good, yeah,
course,
yeah.
right? There's things across those relationships that, of course, have some commonalities, and then you are you that shows up into each of these. But you have to shift your approach with each of them, and so leadership is the same thing. And I think that makes it really hard, and we're really hard on leaders. And this is a bit of a tangent, and I'll come back into what I think is the solution, and which is not content, it's connection. But what I really find frustrating, and I spend a lot of my time going to conferences. I kind of straddle in between the HR spaces, and then I do, of course, work with organizations, and then I also spend some time in the tech space. And every time I hear someone talk about leadership, it's usually from a lens of blame. It's usually
Ah,
saying our leaders are not doing what they should be doing. Our leaders are, they don't know what they're doing, right? It's always from this thing of like, I'm blaming them and I need to fix them. And I have a lot of empathy for leaders because leadership is hard, and it's even harder today than it's ever been. And I think that the expectations we have of leaders and the multiple roles that they play in an organization, which we can talk about, um, is unsustainable. And so to assume and expect that a leader can be taught a playbook and to memorize that playbook and be able to apply it in every situation is not realistic at all. And so I think that there's a couple things there. Wait, yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I just had a conversation with Jenny Gilbert, who's
Mm-hmm.
I'm a raving fan of Jenny. She's awesome. I love our chats for so many reasons. But last time
Yes.
we got into just the reality of the weight of being a working leader. And she's like,
Yes.
90% of the people I deal with are working leaders, where
Yeah.
they have tasks, they have deliverables, they have outputs, they have projects, and they have a team. This isn't an
Yes.
ivory tower journey for the majority of people that are out there under the banner of leader. And how
Yeah.
often have you had friends or colleagues that they got promoted to leader and it was kind of a demotion because they were working twice as hard for the same money and getting kicked around all the time?
Yeah.
Like, just building off what you said, and that the
Yes.
idea of the working leader really resonated with me, the way she broke it down
Yeah.
of, this is not someone who just gets to sit around and study the art of leadership. They are expected to deliver, and plus here's a whole team of people that we just threw at
Yes.
you that you maybe didn't even choose.
Yes. Yeah, I heard that conversation, and Jenny and I are friends. We used to work together at
Yep,
Seed.
I knew each other.
Yeah. And so I actually would love to extend that because I think
Please.
there's more than two hats that a leader wears. And actually,
Mhm.
I am currently working on my PhD in this topic. And
Oh, excellent. Well, we've pulled on the right thread then, have we?
yes, we have. Yeah. And it's imminent right now. It's on my mind. I get up very early in the morning to work on it each morning.
I love it.
But essentially, what my sort of working thinking around this, and so it's not research yet, is that leaders have at least 5 hats and roles that they carry
Okay.
in an organization. And we often talk about the hats of a leader, but it's usually the behaviors that people talk about there. And I'm talking about the roles expected of them when they enter in as a leader. And so the first one is leader as individual contributor. So this is part of that working manager conversation you had with Jenny, right? Where it's they own their own projects, right? Leaders they come in as a person just like anybody else in the workplace. They're an employee of the workplace, and they have to do their own stuff. The second one, which is the other part of the working leader that you two were talking about, was leader as people manager. So you have to lead your team. You have to take on, the management of the team, the helping them set some goals, the making sure that they have the support they need in their work. Sometimes you're a toxin handler, right? Where if someone comes in with some emotional baggage, you're having to manage that. So focus on your team. But then the next one is a leader as an operational strategist. So you also carry the role of managing your budgets. and the operations of your team, following policies and procedures, maybe even developing some. And then the strategy side is you also have to set some strategy. You might have to set, like, depending on your level, a 1 year or a 5 year strategic plan.
Where are we going? And then I have to execute on how we get there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
operational strategist. The fourth role is leader as organizational citizen. So you as as a leader in the organization, it's not just you looking and focusing on your stuff in your team, but it's also looking up and around. And so you need to collaborate with other teams in the organization, with your peers. You have to champion change that the organization has decided on. You might have to be in some work teams or projects in support of the organization that is in addition to all the other things you have to work on. So you have to show up as a citizen and an advocate within the organization for all people. And that might even involve, some of the burden of seeing other people in other parts of the organization struggling and having to support them, or just being a witness to it and not being able to support them. That's really hard. And then the last one is organizational ambassador. And that's when you have to look outside the organization. So it's externally. So how are you as a leader showing up to represent your organization externally? And also, how are you then navigating whatever external pressures coming in to the organization, whether it be like regulations or government or funding or whatever your environment entails? All of that is going to impact you as a leader, and a role that you play, both externally and internally.
Oh my God, I love these. I love these so much.
Yes,
I have
right.
so many thoughts. You just clarified so many things for me too. Something that I ran into years ago. If you're familiar with Elliot Jacks, he's a industrial psychologist who did a whole study on work that I ran into a few years back, and his concept was around time span. And it was the number one determinant of success of an individual in a role is their ability to manage time into the future in contrast to the task they're asked to do. And there was kind of these 5 levels, and we've used it because it's something that can be used from a hiring or really understanding, like individual contributor or even people manager. That's a very 1 to 30 day kind of timeline often, where as soon as you get up into operational strategist, organizational citizen, you're getting into level 2, level 3, where that person now needs to maintain abstract concepts in their mind 2-3 years out. It's really hard to do that when you're fighting fires on a Tuesday morning. Like just the
Yes.
time and the level. So when I think about most people, individual control, like if I know leaders that I know, and even thinking about my own organization, I don't have time for clients anymore because you're asking me to do these other things.
Yeah.
Or I need to grow the team, or then even get beyond that, I need to build a strategy of where we're going to go and how our brand needs to show up and what services we need to offer 2 years from now to counter AI. And the individual contributor, people manager part always pull the other 3 down. And I don't want to make not the sound that they're below, but they're the most day-to-day time consuming. Versus the other ones are kind of, there's less things in your desk and there's more things in your abstract, where the first 2 fills your desk.
Yes, it's true.
That's a very interesting balance when you look at an organization and go, well, yeah, but I promoted them to this, but shit, they better keep still doing that.
Yeah.
Like we're shooting ourselves in the foot as leaders, but yet we're all under resourced because we don't feel like we have the budgets to maybe have both. I don't know. Maybe now this has become a therapy session. I'm sharing you some of my own concerns. I'm wrestling with some of these things right now. You just summed up some of my world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I actually think that some different people approach it differently. And I've noticed that there's some people who give their time differently, right? They prioritize their time differently based on those roles. And as a result, get different outcomes, right? Whether it's that they get promoted or they don't. And so I think it's fascinating. And I don't know the answer. I don't actually know how to fix it. Like, I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to study is actually what are the causes of stress in each of these roles. And I want to build a scale to be able to measure what is impacting leader stress and well-being in this context. Because then, if leaders are feeling burnt out and exhausted, which is what they are feeling, how do we help them? And I think part of it is understanding, well, what is actually stressing them out?
And wouldn't you be able to ultimately hold these up against, like, our goal is a rapid growth, 5-year exit. Okay, great. We need more people that are actually at the top 3 levels. Like, there should be also a matrix where you can start to look at, from even a board perspective, to understand this, to know what kind of team you put in place. And that rock star individual contributor who often gets promoted always resorts back to where they got the most praise and validation was the individual contributor work.
Right. And just think about that you're absolutely right. And just think about it. If they're promoted, but they're not playing an organizational citizen role like they should at a higher level, then they're not creating a culture that encourages or expects or recognizes those
But when
things.
it's time to roll up their sleeves and get shit done, they are amazing.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think I think if we could find a way to measure it and like first confirm that maybe these are existing things, but it feels very right in my own experience. And it sounds like yours too.
It resonated really hard for me. Like you just set me back in my chair. I loved it.
You're like, whoa, yeah. But I think the other thing too is that we know that leaders experience stress and exhaustion because of things that are not within their control. And so by understanding what is causing that stress within the context of these roles, it also can tell us, what are some tools we can give leaders to support them in managing it, and also help them recognize that there are certain things out of their control that they are going to have to know that they're not going to be able to control. And then B, how can we then tell the organization a story about here's the things that are like a part of your systems, your processes that you may not be aware of that are actually causing a lot of stress on your leaders and probably on your employees. And by giving people the data and the picture and the story about those things, I think we could be more effective at addressing some of the widespread burnout and exhaustion that's happening in organizations today.
Well, you're able to give it a name, right? And that changes a lot so much when it can be identified. When it's the boogeyman, you can never catch it, right? You can never fix it. It's just, the boogeyman. We don't know what it is, but you name it. And I just finished reading Atlas of the Heart. And I'm not a big Brené Brown fan, only because she's so popular, not because she's not great. I want to be clear. That's my own weirdness. I'm like, oh, you're too popular, I'm not going to read. But I love her concept of like, how are we supposed to manage emotions if we don't even know how to name them or define them? And that's what's resonating with me when I hear you talk about organizations. How do we manage this if we can't even name it? Or like, oh, hey, we've now had a shared dialogue that we all see this thing. And now it starts to come up, might be using humor, might be using different things, but now it's at least you can name it. And then that becomes part of, this is how we are here. This is how we address these things. And that then to me is where culture actually really lives.
Yes. And I actually think that it's easy to start doing those things without the data. Like, I mean, data is really helpful and can help tell a more detailed story. And this is where connection comes in. This is where I think that the most important thing that we can get leaders to spend time on if they're learning or trying to build leadership skills is to connect with each other. And so this, and because then that is when you hear what's going on for somebody else. It also builds trust, right? As soon as you create some intentional opportunities for leaders to connect, right? You give them, we like to use warm-up questions. I like to pull it from research on how to fall in love, right? So they're questions that go deeper.
A little bit of vulnerability creates instant trust, instant trust. And
what's so funny is that, every time we have, in my career, when I've run leadership development programs that are often quite long, right? They're like 8 months, 12 months. The number one feedback that we get from leaders around why they liked the program was the opportunity to connect with their peers. That's always the feedback. And I mean, and quite frankly, like, any kind of data that you collect on learning transfer is pretty horrendous. Like there's not a lot of learning transfer.
If it worked, the millions and millions of dollars that have spent on leadership training, we'd be in a different place, right?
It's so true. And so it's this one of those things where, and that goes back to the content, how we value content over a connection. Whereas what if we flipped the script? What if it was, we value connection over content? And so you still bring in content because people still need to build some knowledge around these spaces, but it's not the central focus. Instead, it's about, the focus is on how do I create trust and connection across people? And when you create trust and connection, you're also able to build collaboration. So I know a lot of organizations have trouble with silos and, lack of trust amongst teams or alignment. They lack alignment, right? And so by having leaders come together in very small groups, and giving them a chance to build trust, giving them a chance to talk about, very intentional topics related to leadership. So it could be as simple as like, how do you have a difficult conversation with an employee? And everybody shares their perspectives. And you're going to get a whole bunch of different examples. You're going to get a whole bunch of colliding perspectives. And that's where the growth happens. And then if you get them to self-reflect, you teach them how to reflect. That's how you grow leadership.
followed by some role playing, and then the person who was getting the feedback giving feedback on how the role playing went, which also could be awkward. It's an interesting little circle to play.
Yeah, and I don't. It's funny because I don't love role play, because I think that can be really hard to be authentic if you've practiced a script. But I do think it's you can.
Yeah, no, it has to be a little bit more freestyling. Yeah, I'm a raging extrovert in those environments. So I'm like, okay, I feel uncomfortable, but all right, let's do it.
Yeah, well, and like imagine. So yes, exactly. Like if you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, then it becomes. It's never easy, right, to have a hard conversation, but it becomes less daunting because you know you're going to experience discomfort, and you also know that you can handle it, and you also know you feel a sense of care for that person, and that you're going to find a way to figure this out. But imagine workplaces where you needed to have a difficult conversation with an employee, and you could first go to a couple other leaders on your team or a couple other leaders in the organization and say, hey, I have to have this difficult conversation. Can I run a few things by you? Can I practice? Can you help me? Like, what should I say? And like, I mean, that seems so obvious, but it doesn't happen in a lot of organizations.
Oh, we totally do that. So you just made me feel very good. You just made me feel very good about that.
Yes. Yeah. People feel really lonely. Leaders feel really lonely. And I don't know why, but many believe that they're not allowed to have those conversations with other leaders. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. I mean, there's no rules from HR that say you can't have those conversations. You, of course, don't share, personal information, but you can certainly go and say to a colleague like, oh, this person's coming back from leave and I don't know how to have the conversation with them. What do I do?
Well, you and I talked about the gossip versus collaboration. And like, if you're having it and then not having it with that person, and you're just venting or triangulating or doing the whole kind of victim kind of game that can happen inside organizations, that's not what we're talking about here at all. To be like, no. I think that can be toxic and very unhelpful and creates all these silos and pockets and cliques and all this kind of thing. But it's like, hey, I need to have this conversation. I really want to work through it with you because I want to make sure, like, my intention is that it's a valuable outcome for all of us, including the organization and that other human being. Remember, they're not an employee, they're a human being. Yes. That's very different than like, oh, so-and-so's driving me nuts. That's not what we're talking about, just to clarify. I felt the need to clarify that.
Yeah. No, exactly. You're right. I mean, we're so fear-based in our organizations that we're always worried that whatever we say is going to come back to us. And it's around how do we solve for that? How do we move organizations to be more humane and to be more human and, open and trusting and, like recognizing that we might try it once and it's not going to work. And then we're going to have to try it again, and just giving each other that space, right? Complexity requires space.
What's the rub with an organization that has a very strong, HR culture around performance improvement plans, and this is how we do this, and this is how we do that, that sometimes can feel, in my experience, can take the humanity out of it?
Yeah, I think that sometimes we have lost our purpose or intention for doing those things. We do it because everybody else does it. And so, I have a huge bone to pick with performance management processes.
I had a thought that you might, Megan. I had a sneaking suspicion.
Yeah. But I think without getting on my soapbox and going down that road, which I know you gave me permission to do, but in this case, I think the most important thing is to go back to like, what are we trying to achieve with performance management? What is the goal we have, or the impact we're trying to create? And then question everything. Question it all, and try to challenge yourself to even flip your beliefs or I do this like flipping orthodoxies. I love on Fridays on LinkedIn. I do this flipping belief thing where I invite people to flip a commonly held belief about performance management. So it might be that one belief I used to, or not, it's not just performance management, it's leadership in general. But so with performance management, it could be a common belief is we need performance ratings to help us make decisions about promotions. And then you just ask what if we didn't? What's the opposite? Right? So keep questioning and flipping the beliefs. And so the first step would be, okay, why are we trying to do this? The second step would be, well, what do we believe to be true? Either like inherent beliefs within the current system we have, or beliefs that we ourselves hold, right? Like, that people will only perform if they are, if they get a rating, right? Or like, do you know what I mean? Like, or people will, or leaders will only have feedback conversations with employees if they have to follow a process. right? That's another commonly held belief, right? Leaders need a process to be able to give feedback. And so then you all get together and you get silly and you imagine alternatives, right? It says in order for leaders to have feedback, they have to wear a funny hat until they give someone feedback. I don't know, like something stupid, right? Or like just be ridiculous.
You did say silly. Yes. I like it. Yeah,
no, because it's
silly hat dame. I love silly hat dame. Yeah.
And sometimes silly actually opens up a new way of thinking about something and causing us to question our beliefs.
It shifts your psychology. It shifts your chemicals. It's the break state you and I were talking about. It changes your pattern. It interrupts your pattern. Yeah. Having someone sit across you with a silly hat, you'd be like, you can't think about that situation in any way that you've thought about it before because the variables have changed.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can no longer look at it. And it's really hard to do. Like we get leaders to do this all the time where we use card decks and we have like a commonly held belief about leadership that we get them to then try to flip. And at first what we find is people, they lament about it. Like they're all frustrated with the belief and they lament. And then you have to get them to move past it.
I love a good lament. I love what a good use of the word lament.
Yes, I know. They're just like, oh, I hate this. And it's like,
it's so hard, awkward.
Right. Yeah. And then so what I do then is I then say, okay, you're allowed a minute to do that. And then you have to start imagining. And it's really hard for people to do that. And some people find it very uncomfortable, but we've noticed that leaders who practice it with us get better and better over time. And what's really cool is that there is never one flip. There's always many. And that's why I love to crowdsource it on LinkedIn, because the things that people come up with are things I never would have thought of. And
because it's not one of those like, give me the 5 best uses of a paperclip versus give me as many crazy ideas as you can come up with. Those are 2 different outcomes, right? In terms of the exercise.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I love it. It's fun.
Yeah. So here it's like great for everyone. So a great leader is a great leader for anyone is the one on my desk today. Right. So we often believe that, right? And we actually create and so you can see the thread, right? Is if we believe that, then what we do, and oftentimes it's very like we don't actually talk about it. So it's a hidden belief.
It's unconscious.
Yes, it's unconscious or unstated. And then what happens is that we then follow the thread with that belief as a foundation. And we go, okay, so if we believe that a great leader is a great leader for anyone, then we should be able to develop a leadership program that makes all of our leaders great. The same program for everybody, right? So that because we believe that one type of leadership is going to be great for everyone, there's a formula, right? Yeah. And so, but if we flip that belief and we, a great leader is someone different for everyone. I don't know. That's the obvious opposite flip. But then there's maybe more. It's.
Yeah, finding your orthodoxies. And I had a great conversation with Sabrina about the orthodoxy the first time her and I chatted, actually. So I know you guys are friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We talk about that.
She does that very well.
She does. Yes, exactly. And so we've taken it further and we've started to invite leaders to do that work too. Yeah.
Oh, how much are you loving what you're doing right now?
Oh, so much. I feel like
I'm sensing that.
Yes. I feel like I'm living in alignment is how I would describe it. I've always had this passion for leadership but when you're in an organization, there's often boxes put around it. And I get it. It makes sense. That there's sometimes there's a rank order of projects that need to come through and it's uncomfortable. And, you've got someone within your organization who feels like a little bit of a squeaky wheel trying to get you to do some new things and you don't want to focus on it. So I felt often like when we were trying to do some innovative things in the organizations I've spent time in, it gets chipped away until it becomes less innovative and more vanilla. And so now I feel like being on the outside, which I understand, and I'm not saying that's not the reality, because it is the reality of many organizations. But having the opportunity to kind of explore and open up the possibilities of what we can do, and then bringing splashes and drips and little pebbles to organizations who are willing to try those things has been really interesting. So it's been amazing. I'm so thankful.
Very good job of bringing Pebble all the way back at the end also.
Yeah.
As a storyteller, I was like, oh, well done. That was like masterfully done. Literally, it's not a mic drop, it's a Pebble drop. I love it.
Yeah, it's a Pebble drop. I love it. Yeah.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you, I'm sitting on I spent some time on your website this morning. Discoverpebble.com is LinkedIn. What are your favorite forms of get a hold of me out there in the world? There's many.
Yes. Yeah. Well, absolutely. Discoverpebble.com is the one spot, and there's our email right there. And then LinkedIn. I love to connect with people, and so happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn. That's usually where I spend most of my time. Yeah.
And if I'm a leader of a small to medium organization or a large enterprise, can I do this in bite sizes? Do I have to buy the 1-year membership, or can I meet with you, talk about what our team is, where we're at? I'm assuming you meet them where they're at, because that's your philosophy. 100%. So I can't imagine it being anything different. No, you must do these 3 different versions. Like, oh, that was contrary to what you just said. I'm assuming this is kind of open for people to also discover and work with you, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's no membership. It's, we're wanting to experiment with people who want to experiment with new ways of leading with.
Oh, there's a challenge in there. I like that one.
Exactly.
Are you somebody who likes to experiment? Then we want to hear from you.
Yes, exactly. Or I mean, if you're looking at your leadership and going, this hasn't worked, we spent all this money, we've tried to develop our leaders and yet nothing's changed, or, leaders are feeling exhausted, what are we going to do? Those are all things that we help support and solve for. Yeah.
Amazing. Meghan, so fun. I was so excited. We could go for another hour. I'm specifically putting a pin in it because I think there's going to be a part 2. I want to hear more about the 5 hats and so many things I wanted to explore deeper on, but your philosophy, the overarching practice, then the thought you're putting into this, I love it. So kudos to you on your journey, and congratulations on Pebble. And what's the timing on you're doing your PhD or your master's?
My PhD.
Yes. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Where are we at on that big monster of a journey?
Well, we're not going to talk about where we've come from because that's been a very long journey. But I should be done. Hopefully, the timeline is by kind of June-ish.
Oh, lovely. Yes, okay. Well, we're going to talk again about your whole thesis and how that all came together at that point.
Yes, I would love to share the results. Yeah.
All right. June 25. It's in the calendar. It's done.
It's Can we just make it like July 2nd? That will give me
okay. You know what? That works. July 2nd works. You've now said it. It's out there to the universe. Firm dates loosely held. It's okay. We're good.
Exactly. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah. But I'll have some stuff by then, hopefully.
I don't doubt. I can talk to you tomorrow. You'd probably have some new stuff if I know you. So Meghan, thanks for coming on. Thanks for the work you do and the contribution you make to this amazing city that we both share and we live in, and to humanity, because making us all better humans. What a fantastic journey that is.
Oh, thanks, Tyler. Such a pleasure.